This podcast is part of the Democracy Group.
Welcome to Outrage Overload, a science podcast about outrage and lowering the temperature. This is episode 83.
It just showed me that, regardless of how different people may be, regardless of what job you have or how old you are or what cultural background you're from, that everybody at the end of the day can connect over a meal and at a shared table. And I just really thought that was a beautiful message and just something that was really incredible for me to be a part of.
Most of us talk about polarization in terms of media, algorithms, and politics. But what if the problem is simpler, yet also more difficult than that? What if we've just forgotten how to sit down with people who aren't like us? And that's what we're going to talk about on this episode of the Outrage Overload podcast. I'm your host, David Beckmeyer, and today's guest is the founder of a project that literally brings strangers together over dinner to rebuild social trust, one table at a time.
Hello, I am Tim Jones. I am Chief Table Setter and Executive Director of Longer Tables based in the Mile High City. And we believe that the table is the most powerful place on the planet to rehumanize us and reconnect us.
Tim's experiment offers a hopeful and surprisingly simple way to counter the forces pulling us apart. Stay with us.
I had a wonderful time at the 528 table.
This is a special thing that they do here. And I can't wait for the mile-long table. Thank you. Keep going.
Tim Jones, thank you so much for making time for our program.
David, so good. Thank you for inviting me to share some of our stories and our passion around tacos and barbecue.
Right?
Not necessarily, but the general. You get the idea.
Right. Yeah. Everyone I talk to about this project, they're like, that sounds amazing. Like they really do that, that kind of thing. So I will say there's quite a bit of interest. And I think, if we could put some meat on the bones of that story, that would be great. I think you've said that longer tables exist because our social fabric is thinning. I think you've used that language.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We all have these sort of assumptions, a lot of times it's the algorithms
mm-hmm.
or something else. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And,
mm-hmm.
and with what you've learned, is there some sort of thing that comes up often that feels like a misunderstood driver for this sense of disconnection?
Yeah, I think we're very aware, most of us, of the inauthentic and the false connection that is happening on social media. It gives us a sense of connection, and I think the brain science shows us that our bodies are reacting as if it's real connection. So the dopamine hit that we get when we get a messenger, ding, or a text message or an Instagram like even communicates to our brains and maybe even our hearts, depending on where you think all of this lands, is that I'm seen, I matter. I am connected to people, and I think that first piece of I am seen, man, our brains trick us into this idea that hey, we matter, right? Our this central existential question is, do I matter on this tiny speck going around the universe? And could a like on my TikTok video or my Instagram communicate and my value? And I think for half a second it does, and then we need that to perpetuate, and we need more and more and more as we know, and that leaves us high and dry, and actually at the end of the day more isolated than anything, because at the end of the day it's one like, it's one follower, it's one message that is purely digital and not of truly any substance that connects us. So I think the imposter connections are everywhere in our world. Just even if you look at materialism, of the fundamental lie of consumerism and marketing is, if you buy this product, if you have a profile on LinkedIn, you are connected, you matter, you are consuming Thus, you have a place, and it's just not true.
Right. Um, so what one thing about longer tables that seems to be it seems to be a big factor in it is trying to sort of figure out sort of the practice and principles that make this into sort of a genuine connection.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people would be intimidated saying, we're just going to pop you in front of a table of some people you don't know and
Yeah.
go from there. And
Mhm.
I know we talked before about and I know that you have some rules, and some people would say you'd have to have a lot of structure to this. And I don't
Mhm.
think that's what you had today, but we can talk about that a little bit. But I know one thing you talk about, one of the rules is, I believe I got it right, like you sort of can't use your sort of work role as sort of your
Right.
identity. So,
Right.
so, so tell us a little
Absolutely.
bit about that and how that plays into sort of trying to create an environment that maybe makes more genuine connections.
Absolutely. Well, if you've traveled almost anywhere in the world, if you lead with what you do, you get a strange look. And because most of the world does not identify themselves through their jobs. Uh, of course, in our rugged, individualistic Western mindset and posture, what we do defines us. And we all know that we lead with that question: what do you do in everyday life, at conferences? And headline: you are not what you do for a living. Vocationally, sometimes it's an expression of a deeper sense of who we are and our true identity. But in a world where vocations change, all of that, man, that actually creates separation. So when I say what I do, um, both people are quickly evaluating where we are on the social scale, right? And oftentimes, like when I introduce myself, I feel shame because I'm not higher on the social ladder than the other person, which instantly creates disconnection and separation between me and this other person, um, which is tragic. That's how we are always like this assessment of, can this person be of use to me? So in a transactional culture, when we say, hey, welcome to the table, we have two rules. The first rule is there's no talk about work, there are no job titles. And everyone kind of panics for a half a second. You see it in their eyes. And number two, we want to experience the real you. So the table is not a place of performance or impressing anyone. The invitation is to your humanity, and you can just show up as a human being. And David, I never think this is going to work. And those two boundaries or invitations, we could call them rules as well, creates enough social emotional safety that people feel safe enough to be vulnerable, to take a baby step toward vulnerability and authenticity, where someone might say, I'm having a horrible week. Like I had to put my dog down last week, and tears, you see the tears in the eyes. Like those two rules, what they do is instantly equalize the table. So there is no social hierarchy at the table any longer. It is flat. And all that's left is just the humanity, bunch of humans sitting around. And so then we have conversation prompts at the table that ask questions about our childhood and memorable meals and the dreams that we have for our neighborhood or for our children. And people light up, David, because when was the last time you get to talk about your dreams that you have or a memorable meal from your childhood? So oftentimes people ask us, do you say there's no politics? Do you say there's no phones? We have not in 12 years said no talk about politics, no phones, because do people really want to be on their phones when there's a human being 30 feet or 36 inches across the table from them, listening and asking them questions? So this is remarkably simple, um, but through those intentionalities of just no job talk, we are cutting to the humanity. And the end product is we start rehumanizing people beyond their preferences, beyond their labels, beyond this transactional. thing, which just creates with a much deeper connection even within 10 minutes.
Hmm. And I guess that would be part of the design of this system. Those simple guardrails.
Absolutely. And those are social emotional safety guardrails that can be implemented at the table. It can be implemented anywhere, really.
And these are
Yeah.
random connections. Like you don't first do a survey and put certain people at
No.
certain tables or anything. These wherever you sort of show up, you sit down.
Yeah. So when we set a table, whether it's a citywide table or it's inside a company, we start by choosing a cross section of leaders or individuals across that ecosystem. So leaders that normally wouldn't connect, that are normally siloed. We don't cross those sectors usually. And we say, hey, invite 5 to 10 people from your world to the table. So that's how we get the humans there. Then we mix everyone up. So you're sitting next to people that you would never sit with. I remember my first table, I was sitting across from a mid 70s African American woman. And I'm like, well, this is going to be interesting. And within 3 minutes, we were laughing and found a commonality in our grandma's fried chicken recipes. So within 3 minutes. So I realized about 3 or 4 years into setting tables, especially these cross culture tables where you're sitting across from someone from a different ethnicity, different class, different everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what we are doing is very challenging. This is high challenge, social emotionally, a social challenge, if you will. And again, back to those two rules and other things that we do. We do high invitation. So most people at our tables are personally invited. So, David, I would love for you to be my guest at this table. We're going to share dinner. You're going to eat next to people that you would never eat with. It's going to be great. Just trust me. I know it sounds kind of weird, but it's going to be great. And most people go for it. And then when we invite them, they get to the table. Usually their name is written on a place card at that place. And when David, there are some people in our world that have never seen their name on a place card, especially people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. They don't go to these big, huge, fancy weddings, and we see people get there and they see their name, and you could tell like they're kind of taken back. So when they are personally invited and when they see their name on a place card, and then we say, hey, there's no job talk, and we just want to experience the real you. You have permission to just be no performance, man. Just relax and just be you. Holy mackerel. That is powerful. And that connects. So we never think it's going to work, but it is high challenge. But when you lay those, as you said, boundaries, and we're intentional about creating a place where people feel safe and invited, they will go there. Most people will go there, and they'll be real. They'll open up, and you're basically creating these baby blocks of trust of saying, hey, there is no hook here. At the end of the table, we're not saying, hey, okay, we're going to lock the doors and we're going to ask you to make a donation. That never happens. So we're creating trust with people that it's okay, that you're not going to be judged, you're not going to be ostracized. None of that matters. You are welcome as you are.
That's awesome. So, are you collecting any sort of data on this, like qualitatively or otherwise, about like what types of conversations occur, what kind of outcomes there are? I'm thinking of a quote, and I don't remember who, and of course I don't remember the actual quote, but it's something about how, if you participate in something like this and you find everyone boring, it's like you're the boring one, right?
Hate to tell you, but we do. It's very important that we understand what we're doing, and we always want to sharpen our approach. Although, in really humility and I suppose grace, like we really haven't changed our model much from the beginning. We've learned how to ask better questions at the table, So we're always refining those, but the central approach has really not changed with those two rules and some of these intentionalities like invitation and place cards and using people's names. That really hasn't changed, but we're always evaluating and we want to know what happens. And I'm going to preface this by saying we are an awfully pragmatic bunch in America. I don't know if you've noticed this. And so when we apply to grants and so forth, they want to know what are the outcomes 6 months later, what all of this. Um, Look at tables are slow cooked food, right? Humans are slow cooked. Relationships happen very slowly. So it's somewhat difficult to measure some of the long-term impacts of this. And so one of the things I like to preach, we got to get over our pragmatism. That's what's getting us into trouble in the first place because people aren't projects. You don't transact with people. Relationships happen slowly, like slow cooked food. So I just want to offer that because I think that's the table and our methodology and our passion to set more tables across our nation is is communicating. We gotta slow down, man. We gotta slow down. Like life is not a project. You don't plug it into Chat GPT and get an answer. That's not how relationships work. So I will say that. Back to your question in evaluation, we measure before a table and after the table people's sense of belonging, connection, the ability to kind of these skills of asking questions and being able to be vulnerable, those sorts of things. Where do they feel like they belong? And then we measure those same things after the table, and we definitely see a massive increase in even hopefulness for future connection and future relationship. David, we hear from people that never sit at a table and they are reporting back that their sense of hope and their sense of future connection has been elevated because we simply have shown them a model of a place in our world where social connection is possible, where friendship is possible, where authentic belonging is possible. So, but then the storytelling from a week after a table or months later, we have. I like to joke that be careful who you open up to across the table. We had a couple meet, fall in love, and have a baby from one of our tables. So I like to joke about that because that could happen. But we have heard years of stories of people doing business deals together, collaborating, people discovering their circle of best friends. Um, we've heard all of those things. So we're learning how to measure that better and follow up with people. But we last thing I'll say on this is we've started asking questions, especially around civic gatherings of, hey, are you more likely to go knock on your neighbor's door? Are you interested more in civic volunteerism? And all of those numbers are over 50% of people that are even just simply open to the idea of walking across the street and knocking on their neighbor's door because after experiencing the table they realize, oh, this isn't difficult. Actually, people are super cool when you start talking to them.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know a lot of the bridge building efforts struggle with kind of the preaching to the choir
Yeah,
problem.
yeah.
Um, how does Longer Tables think about reaching people who are maybe aren't already motivated to connect?
Great question. Great question. And it's getting harder and harder. Uh, by the way, I don't know if you'll cover this, but there's studies showing that w- our general sense of loneliness is actually going down in recent years. The research is showing loneliness. People aren't reporting as much loneliness, and so there's a thought that, oh my gosh, maybe these initiatives are working. It actually is not. They're actually not working. What's happening is we as human beings are adjusting to solitude. So instead of going out and hanging with friends on Tuesday night, we're going home and binging Netflix for 3 hours. And that is we have adjusted our social emotional needs for that to fill that bucket. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, there's
It's
this word that was like a word of the year called parasocial, where it's
okay.
where it's like, we see these one-way communications as a replacement for true connection.
Yes. That's right. That's right. Absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. If we don't even have the felt need to go out and ask someone to coffee. Holy mackerel. We're seeing this with teenagers and young adults that aren't aren't asking one another out because their social emotional needs are already filled and they don't have the skill set. Simon Sinek talks a lot about this. So, bridge building, one of I think the powerful things we do. This is a little bit of a repeat, but when we go into a company or a city, we find what we call like the people of peace, the people who understand the power of the table, who, when we pitch the idea, their eyes light up and they're like, yes, I love that, and those people are everywhere. So whether they're nonprofit leaders or civic leaders or faith leaders or chamber leaders, I mean, we work a lot with business chamber of commerces, and those places are full of people who love this. So we find that because we're not going to hit everybody, we find those people and we invite them into co-creating, co-setting the table as hosts, as co-hosts. Now, those people have social credibility that in their community that I can't get to. And so, because they're there, they do the invitation into that community. And most people, not all, will accept that invitation to a table. So, just through kind of yeah, those levels of hosts who invite, we end up getting a true cross section of people at the table. And when you take this inside a company and you have a cross section of both positional leaders as well as our informal leaders, the executive assistant who's gathering people all the time, you get those people in the company. They invite 5, 6 people from their circle of influence, and people show up. So that has worked remarkably well, and you end up getting the people who would often self-select out, but will give it a try.
Hmm. I want to kind of get into a little bit about the practical sides of this. So
Yeah.
how many of these events can you put together in a year, and how many people get, because people always are talking about scaling. And are there any ideas like somehow making it repeatable, like you could like have franchises, or I don't know how it might work, but
Absolutely.
tell us a little bit
Absolutely.
about that side of it.
Absolutely. The table is a beautiful thing because it's super simple. Now there are like eight eight intentionalities, eight, we call them eight competencies of table leadership. These are just this is the secret sauce, and we're fully open source, man. We just want you to experience it and model it, but it's simple. This is not rocket science, right? So it really comes naturally to people. They just gotta be modeled it. They have to experience it, and then they realize how powerful it is. Just because it's not complex doesn't mean it's not powerful or effective. So the table, once experienced, it can scale to any size, literally as well as organizationally. Like the table can be 10 people. It can be, our longest table is 3,400 people. And
And people,
because
you hear a number like that, I'm sure people are going, "Say what now? Did you just say 3,400 people?"
3,400 people. I would not recommend setting a table for 3,400 people. Lots of logistics, but David, it still works. The way we design the conversation around every 8 foot table, you're still connecting with those 4 or 5 people around you. So it doesn't matter how long the table is. It scales, and the connection impact is still the same. So when people experience this, we teach them how to do it. They can take it. And guess what? The table goes anywhere. There is no specific context that the table has to work. It doesn't have to be downtown closing down streets. We've done that. It can go into the boardroom. It A church can do this. A faith community can do this. A neighborhood. We have an entire campaign over individual people living in a neighborhood saying, "I want to host a table." We give them a kit. We teach them how to ask questions and the conversation prompts, and they get 8 neighbors together. We've had people do this across the nation, and they love it. And once they've experienced it, it's very simple. Um, it it's it kind of goes viral. People are like, "Oh, I can do this," because most people are terrified to do this. They think it's really difficult. It's not. And once they see, "Oh, all I have to do is invite some people. We can do potluck, and I can just set out a table and chairs in my yard." Oh, well, I can do that. Um, so this really goes anywhere, and we are excited to build a kit. We've had cities across the nation reach out. We have companies reaching out saying, "Hey, can you do this inside my company?" And yes, there we've got a kit that will teach you all of the ethos, the strategy, and fundamentally at the end of the day, um, what really is simple leads to more sustained impact through kind of the baked in strategy of connecting leaders that are often siloed in a community or a company or even a neighborhood, connecting those leaders, they're cultivating relationship by setting this table, and then we're going to follow up and um, help offer this leadership formation around what does it look like to be a leader that sets tables. So we realized this a year ago, looking at leaders, mostly inside companies, some civic leaders. I realized, oh, what those leaders are doing, they're setting a table, a figurative table. They're inviting people to just show up in safety, emotional safety, and just to be their whole selves, and give them keys to the car where they have loyalty, they have ownership, they feel like they belong, they feel like they matter, they're important to the organization. That's a table, right? And then you get everybody around that and say, "Hey, everybody belongs here." Uh, so I think where our work is going to make the biggest difference is we can't set tables in every city in America. Um, there are leaders there to do that. They just need to experience it and do it. But what we can do is if we reach 1,000 leaders and teach them not only the competencies of what it is to set a table, the practical aspects of setting a real table, we're going to walk them into leading from a place of wholeness and true identity, so they are showing up in their fullness and their wholeness, and that is the deeper invitation to inviting people to show up in their humanity and their wholeness, and not in transactional relationships, but in compassion, in love, in service, in all of those things.
So that's awesome. So it sounds like the first step is somebody would attend a table, participate in a table, right? And if they
That's right.
think they want to be a leader, and then once that happens, then you have these kits and tools. I
Yeah.
got thinking while you were saying all that. People a lot in this space often talk about sort of the training the trainers. Like, I wonder how
Yes.
many levels of indirection you could do to where that you could start offloading even that first step, but that somebody could sort of learn through a second organization or something.
That's right. 100%. Modeling is key. And this is so connecting. I'm like, I joke. I'm like, did we put cocaine in the water? Why are people so like lit up and energized after this? And again, you don't need to energize everybody. It's a handful of leaders inside a city. It can start with 5 people. I've seen it. It can start with 3 people in a company culture who just start modeling this and doing this. And because it's so human, it can be replicated and adopted. So that is the hope. And I think we know throughout world history, leaders set the bar. Leaders maintain culture, they create culture, they set the culture, and everything follows. That is the definition of leadership. right?
And we can find out all this information at your website.
Absolutely. Yep.
It's
Longertables.org.
longertables.org. That's awesome. I
Yes.
wanted to close on a sort of a jump to another place just to kind of wrap up. Um,
Sure.
You've been doing this a while. You've got a lot of, sort of, even if it's more intuitive than maybe analytical or data driven. Um,
Hmm.
what what gives you, some sort of concrete beyond tropes, sort of, and beyond just like a high level emotional kind of thing? What gives you
Hmm.
some confidence that we can rebuild this social trust at scale?
Wow. I mean, I'm just going to be honest, David. I don't know if we can. I know in my own life what it takes to experience change or growth or transformation is crisis and suffering. And I get emotional because I know that's the only thing that's helped me grow in my life and has forced me to say, okay, stop. How do I rewire this? What new beliefs do I need to adopt? Because this isn't working, and it's only crisis that does that for human beings. So I'm worried to some degree of what level of crisis are we going to have to hit. We thought for a moment the pandemic would do it. It didn't. It didn't. It lasted for a few minutes, but it wasn't enough. And so I'm concerned. I'm concerned about that. The data, the science, there's 30 years of research that this work matters, that this is anything but a waste of time. This Harvard has done years of studies around workplace culture, belonging, and connection. And this is long before DEI. This is simply belonging, like caring for your people. That the science is all there. You retain your people. They are much more engaged. They collaborate. They innovate if they feel welcome in their wholeness at work. And I don't think we need 30 years of research to we know that. We just know that's true, right? So Vivek Murphy, Surgeon General, former Surgeon General, came out in 23 with the epidemic of isolation and loneliness. All of his research is scientifically backed that we know there are physical consequences to isolation and loneliness and polarization. We know that that leads to early death. Now we're connecting it to dementia. We're connecting it to all of these things, heart disease, obesity. It all goes through the roof. And like, I don't need to read 300 studies on that. I get it. I get that that's what happens. And that is the consequence of the world that we're finding ourselves in. So it's an answer that we don't want, but it is how do we humble ourselves for a minute and just tell the truth about what's going on, that we don't have the answers, that we are in need of help, that we maybe not have it figured out, and that maybe we're selfish a little bit in trying to fulfill this individualistic dream that we were fed for so many decades of it's all about you, right? Maybe it's not about all about me. So I pray that it doesn't take a larger crisis than the pandemic to help us realize. And we're seeing a lot of potential and hope in these younger generations that aren't buying it. They're not buying like because there is no economic path anymore. That has completely changed in our country, where there isn't. You go to college, you land a great paying job, and then you're retiring at 60 years old. That's gone. So maybe that will be enough crisis for us to realize mattering purpose, real authentic social connection is what we've been longing for all this time, and that we're going to start prioritizing this. So, and I think it's at the end of the day, it's going to be a leadership issue. It's going to be leaders that hopefully rise to the top and show us the way.
Right, but maybe not the leaders that sort of call themselves leaders today.
It's the healthy whole leaders, and I think as many are talking about right now, it is all of this is going to move back to the local focus, the local movement, the hyper local that we cannot depend on this massive system to meet all of our needs. It's getting more and more challenging all the time. But can I make a difference? Absolutely. In my neighborhood, yeah, I can make a difference in the lives of my 10 closest friends. Absolutely. I can make a difference at the grocery store by actually asking the employee about their lives and getting to know them. So this back to local movement, I absolutely love. It's like going back in time of like, hey, let's get to know our neighbors at the end of the day.
Well, Tim, I really appreciate that authentic answer, and not trying to come up with some, sort of song and dance about how wonderful the world might be. Because it is a serious problem. I know for some of us, when we talk about what that crisis was, for some of us, it was hitting our outrage overload.
Yeah. Yes.
That kind of thing, right? So I think that applies to some of our listeners as well.
Yeah, the only place that goes is separation. Only will go to more separation. War only leads to more war. So at what point are we just going to say, like, surrender? I surrender. This is not working. I'm not happy. I'm anxious. I'm depressed. And I'm just going to start being honest about it. So, in JFK words, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. So we have to start being honest because the fear of the other, the fear of what happens if I'm alone in life, we have to start. I think that's also part of the starting point is let's just start being honest with each other. And I think we're going to find some beautiful commonalities and connections if we start telling the truth and being honest with one another.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Tim Jones, thank you so much. I really love this interview, and I think this is going to make a great episode.
Love it, David. Thanks for what you're doing and inviting truth-telling and conversation and into our world.
Thank you, Tim. Take care.
Take care.
That is it for this episode of the Outrage Overload podcast. For links to everything we talked about on this episode, go to outrageoverload.net. Outrage Overload is a Connors Institute podcast. The Connors Institute for Nonpartisan Research and Civic Engagement at Shippensburg University works to disseminate high-quality, nonpartisan information to the American public around issues of societal well-being, democracy promotion, and news literacy. If you found this episode valuable, please share it or leave a review. It really helps. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.